very first time next to what I would describe as a 6'5" behemoth. This man stared down at me with the most piercing look, showing me the hunger he had in his eyes to win this game. It was a terrifying sight, but I took it head on with all the courage I could muster. But the other team, seeing me as a more nervous and weaker player, decided to target me, charging down at me, thinking it would be an easy opportunity to score. But somehow, I managed to swat the ball out of their best players' hands. The crowd roared, the bleachers erupted, seeing a nobody like me do something amazing like that. It was a great moment for me, but I knew my journey had just begun and the pressure was on. I ran down the court at the other end, hoping to contribute some more to my team, but didn't expect much. Yet looking around the court, I noticed I was the only person open for a shot, and out of desperation, my teammates had to pass the ball to me. I held on to it for dear life, but realizing there were only a few seconds left in the game, I had to take a shot. And as I released the ball, I noticed something strange. Time seemed to slow down. Screaming and shouting crowds were silenced. I couldn't feel my body. I just stood there, watching in anticipation as the ball inched closer and closer to the basket. This ball, this shot, this very moment could define the rest of my career in basketball. Could define the rest of my life. But let's take a step back. It wasn't always this way. In fact, I began playing basketball very reluctantly, only because my friends played. And the more they played, the better they got, and the bigger the gap between us grew. So much so that it reached a point where I was hysterically bullied for it. And that ignited something in me. I had to get better. I had to catch up. So I trained endlessly, day in and day out. And through all this time spent on the court, I fell in love with the sport. It became the essence of my life. But what happens when that essence starts to fade? When I rejoined my old teammates on the varsity team, now no longer as captain, it was still my instinct to try and take charge. But every time I did so, I felt unnoticed, ridiculed, alienated by my teammates. They didn't respect me as an authority figure, seeing as I was the youngest player on the team. Having built up this personality, this ego around the sport, and losing it so quickly, it hurt. If I was supposedly a prodigy at basketball, but I faced continuous failure and was constantly berated by my teammates, what would happen to me in other areas of my life where I was nowhere near as good? As I continued to play, joining my school's team and becoming captain my sophomore year, I faced countless hardships. I kept feeling the weight of the pressure on my chest. Having to balance being a student athlete was mentally exhausting. I felt suffocated, lost as I grappled with what to do. I could not leave it all behind, but with every passing day, the tension grew, and I could not cope with it anymore. The longer this went on, the more I struggled, athletically, academically, and socially. It was a cyclical process. Set unrealistic expectations, fail, beat yourself up about it, and repeat. Anybody who has ever excelled at anything can tell you that you reach a certain point, you stop competing with those around you, and only with yourself. It didn't matter what anyone else was doing, so long as I was better than I was yesterday. But having done so much in the past, I kept setting higher and higher expectations for myself. The value that basketball had initially taught me was lost to me. I had learned that you should only compete with yourself, but I was back to just comparing myself to others, seeing how much more they had done than me, and how much of a failure I was, just because of a little orange ball. Looking back and reflecting at key moments in your life is extremely important. Seeing how they've shaped us change the trajectory of our lives and our personalities is an important step to take. Looking back at that game was one of these moments for me. I was still a hopeless, unharmed kid, watching the ball he just shot soar through the air. I had already expected failure. The ball would inevitably miss the hoop. I knew it. It tormented me, mocked me, laughing in my face by not sealing my fate, by staying still in space. No moment in my life had been as tense and as agonizing as this. So with a solemn and heavy mind, my head hung low, only to be lifted to the surprise of cheers. What just happened? What seemed like one of the worst shots I had ever taken, through some mystical force, managed to score. What to everyone else seemed like just another game won, was the single most defining moment of my life. It feels like everything about me as a person today is dependent on basketball. All of it anchored on the ecstasy of that one game. But was all of it worth it? Every persistent challenge and issue I faced, could it all have been avoided? I can't help but ask myself, what would have happened if I missed that shot? Thank you.